the gap between me and many of the people who also were coming out of uni but had gone to uni on the continent was so wide. Founders that can't scope the problem that they're solving very well are not a good fit for us. This is the kind of work that I've wanted to do, but I don't want to do this forever.
Hey, ITT fam, you're welcome to another episode of Inside the Techosystem podcast. We're so glad to be back. Emmanuel, how are you doing? What's good?
I'm good.
How have you been?
I've been pretty good, actually. Very excited about life.
Wow.
I feel like most of my answers are always upbeat, but maybe it's also because of my mindset. I'm generally like optimistic about life. But
I like
the last
that,
2 months, I've been very, very optimistic. Why? As you can see my setup, I have invested a little bit into filmmaking, cameras, and stuff. So, yeah, that's how I'm doing.
Actually, that's something to actually talk about. So, Emmanuel has actually been exploring filmmaking and everything that has to do with cameras. And I love it. I love it so much, you know. We're trying to get that creator bag, right?
Yeah, you can say that again.
Well, thank you for the optimistic spirit. On the flip side, you know, it's been going great. I hope that sounds believable. Okay. So you guys may be curious why I'm holding a mic in my hand. I'm experimenting with my setup as well, and it's been kind of tricky, but hopefully we figure it out. Joining us today is Kristen. Hi, Kristen. Hello. It's going. Emmanuel, it's going great for Emmanuel. It's going pretty okay for me, I guess. I'm so glad to have Kristen on the show today. But before, we get into the episode, I'd like to introduce Kristen a bit. So we have been working on our intros lately, so we don't just like wing it anymore. Now we're trying to actually, say everything about our guest. So in today's episode, we're joined by Kristin Wilson, who is a Chief Strategy Officer at Spurt and Managing Partner at Innovate Africa Fund. So you know what we say about all our guests. Kristin Wilson, or Kristen for short, is a superstar. So, I mean, we love having superstars on the show. And Kristen currently empowers entrepreneurs and business teams across sub-Saharan Africa with over a decade of experience in tech strategy, product development, and business planning. Kristen deeply understands how to drive growth for startups and SMEs by leveraging data and technology. So after this episode, you can find all of Kristen's details in the show notes because, I mean, if you're looking for someone to like take your startup to the next level, we brought that person to the show today. So welcome once again, Kristen. Emmanuel, we should have a what's it called, sound effects where we just hear people give a round of applause in the background.
Ding, 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 ding.
Yeah, let's look into that in the next episode.
Trying to make me feel awkward.
No.
I feel like I was tormenting you guys the whole time, so now you're like, let me show her how this feels.
No, I mean, superstar treatment. Kristen, we're so glad to have you on the show today. Welcome. Right, so I believe we're going to have a fun conversation today. But before we go into that, if you feel like we didn't do justice to your intro, we'd love for you to tell us a little bit about yourself. So, who's Kristen?
No more talking about it. We're good. I think we.
No. Today's episode is about Kristen, all right? So, Kristen, tell us a little bit about your journey. You know how you got started in tech. You know how did everything eventually work out for you to be on the most vibrant tech podcast in the world today, Inside the Techosystem? You know, being here is a privilege and honor. Yeah, you.
Yeah. No, I feel so honored. I feel like the luckiest girl in the world. You know? It's like, you're like, I texted my mother just before this. I was like, Mama, I made it.
Well, yeah. Shout out to mom. So Kristen, we'd love to know about.
I love my mom.
We'd love to know
it's
about.
Very important that everybody knows.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, let us know what's the journey been like for you so far?
Yeah, well, I guess not super straight, right? I think some people or most people that I've noticed when I talk to a lot of people in the ecosystem, they either, knew in uni or early on that this is what they wanted to do. So maybe they took a dream VC course, or I don't know, included VC or something, or they tried, to hustle their way into some sort of VC job intentionally. For me, it wasn't quite like that. I like building, I like working with founders, I like supporting entrepreneurs. I like helping folks to do sort of evidence backed work. Um, for a long time, I wanted to be a doctor, and one of the most exciting things about me for medicine was this move toward, or like this deepening move toward evidence backed practice of medicine, which meant that doctors were not just practitioners, but they would also be researchers, right? That they would gather data about their patients, about their treatments, and so not just be doing whatever it is they were taught in medical school, but actually doing what they see in the field is working. And so even when I changed focus and I decided that I wasn't gonna, make my parents proud anymore, I then I still wanted to do something that was evidence backed. So I started my career in research. So what they called at the time like operations optimization and research. And the idea was to essentially aggregate data about people's systems, people's processes, and help them to optimize. And then I was typically engaging in that, and the end goal was either like program design or strategy, or something, some curriculum design, whatever it was, depending on the kind of organization, maybe even business development, depending on the organization that I was working with. And so as a result, I was definitely interfacing a lot with founders, interfacing a lot with entrepreneurs, managers, maybe even folks who were inheriting, their family business after the first generation, or something. And then naturally, again, growing up in places where I think a lot of, cutting edge work was being done, also meant that I was seeing people trying to build things, also sometimes building things out of necessity. And so I wanted to back, great ideas. I wanted to be a part of that. I think, when you're like mediocre and you're like self-aware about your mediocrity, then you always want to find a way to be part of something great. And I think that I had this kind of reverse, growing up, they said a lot. Oh, you're really smart. You're a future leader. Like all that nonsense, right? And for me, I felt the opposite, right? I felt very average, and so I think from very early on, I felt like I needed to justify that, right? Justify all the hype, justify all the opportunity, and promise that was attached to my name. And so I felt the need to be, in the vicinity of greatness. And for me, that meant investing, that meant supporting, and so on and so forth. In fact, it was so bad that one time somebody that I was working with was like, Kristen, if you're not careful, you'll become somebody's very, very highly paid chief of staff, instead of being a CEO yourself. But at that time,
Is that such a bad thing? You make it sound
exactly,
like a
like for
sub.
me, it is. Right? She thought it was a sub, but like, my my 16-year-old self was very comfortable with that. I was like, is the CEO a boss bitch? Because if she is, I'm like very happy with that. I'm very happy with that. Because I never planned to be an entrepreneur, honestly. I just wanted to be part of doing really impactful work. And it turned out that for me and the way that my journey evolved, venture became a part of that. And so once I realized that I was in this world, and I woke up one day and I was like, wow, I am in this world, right? I'm supporting funds with due diligence. I'm investing as an angel. Fund managers are coming to me and asking me questions, about my deals, um, you know. So I said, okay, let me educate myself. So I got into a couple of venture fellowships, one out of East Africa and one in the US. And that was really nice for me because I got to see how venture was done in two very, very different markets. And then I also then got involved as a venture partner um, in like a West African fund. I don't know if I should be name dropping. That's why I'm being generic. But essentially, doing all of that, spending that time, allowed me to, I think, I would say, have a more technical hold on venture. Um, I also took some more technical courses around, in school, because again, I was gearing in a particular direction. I hadn't taken certain kinds of courses, so I wanted to have, a better sense of some of the finance type skills that
Yeah.
one might need to have. So I also took, some modeling, some additional modeling classes. So I had a whole lifetime as a management consultant. So I could build models, but not, it wasn't core finance work, right? So I wasn't doing a lot of that stuff. So I wanted to beef up on that skill set as well. So that's essentially my journey. I don't know if that answers your question, but that's how this happened.
Okay. I think that's interesting, but I'm curious to know, or should I say understand? You said, did you ever go to medical school?
I didn't. I'm a bum.
Okay, so like you killed that dream before you even So,
That's why I
but
always shout
what
out to my mother. It's like a
yeah,
consistent apology. Like people are like,
shout
"Why are
out
you always
mom,
talking about your mother?" Like I'm apologizing.
shout out mom. On behalf of Kristen, we are so sorry. So she's doing great now though. So yay! But like I'm so curious because it you s- do you feel like the network of people you were around or the kind of places you found yourself inspired you to go into what you're doing now? Because when people want to switch career paths, it's mostly the more um, common, parts, right? Where, it's like, oh, okay, uh, I'll be a designer or I'll be an engineer or something like. You don't just run into people that say, oh, I work in venture capital. That's really rare. So like, how do you feel like I can't really picture how that happened, except
No, I
maybe
agree.
your group of friends. Oh yeah.
No, so I think what it was more like I have a very, very acute sense of my privilege. And I I sit with it every day, and I would like too often really I'm asking myself, what am I even doing with all of the opportunity that I have? Um, and so because I have always been sort of fixated on making my communities better and something important with my life, um, saving lives felt like the pinnacle of that, right? Like you're literally saving lives, right? And so to me, thinking about paths forward, I felt like I needed to be doing something, if not equally, at least comparably impressive. And to me, helping to move people out of poverty, helping to, change the trajectory of entire communities was really important. And I do believe that entrepreneurship does that, right? That successful entrepreneurs uplift communities, that the best entrepreneurs really change the trajectory of entire communities' lives. And so that seemed like a close second in terms of meaningful things that I could do with my life. And the scale, right? Scale of impact that you can have um, supporting entrepreneurs, especially entrepreneurs with like big, bright, bold ideas of the kind that we like to support in venture, it's so attractive, right? Because in 10 years or 20 years, you can just completely change what people's experience of the world is like, right? It's really, really attractive. So I think for me, it proceeded more from the philosophical than the environmental. And then I sought out the environments for that.
That's interesting, of course. um, but I was looking at your LinkedIn profile.
Yes.
I know that sounds weird, but
Not
you
really.
have
I
No,
feel
it
like
doesn't.
that's why that's all people want us
okay,
to do, right? They want us to make our LinkedIn more lookatable ads or something.
okay, okay, fair enough. And I saw that you had a stint. Is that what they call it? Stint? Yeah. stint at Big Cabal Media, which is Tech Cabal, right?
Yes, but in the old
I
days.
was like, okay, how was that
In
for you?
the old
And
days, what does that mean?
or the
So
early
How?
days?
I was at BCM very, very early when Shei and Bankole were still building. Um,
Oh, what's a
yeah,
BCM? Sorry.
Big Cabal
Oh,
Media.
you were at BCM. I thought you said I was
Yes.
a BCM. I'm sorry, my
No,
bad.
no, 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 no,
My
no.
bad. Yeah.
So it was great. It was a great experience. Lots of, like working with founders when they're building very early. It's an experience, and I used to
It's kind of
make
traumatizing
them
too.
make very, very. Yeah, I used to make
Of
them make
course.
very hard decisions. Like we definitely had like a love hate relationship.
Fair. I
Because
can understand
it's
that.
like making them take medicine, but they were so brilliant. Just this idea of like people with vision, they had just such a big vision. You see sort of like tech about today, and Tomiwa has done
Oh,
such a
it's
great
big now.
job, right? But like when I tell you that like Sheyi and Bankole saw the opportunity clearly in their minds, right? And they had a big vision. Like it's really incredible. But it also, when I think about the BCM experience, because I was also part of like navigating the transition from Shea and Bankole to Tomiwa, and you really sort of see also the importance of understanding like what is the right leader for a phase of a company's journey, right? And that can be like a difficult pill to swallow for everybody involved, investors, founders, team members, right? Because they also, you have like a team, they are all bonded to each other, they all care about each other, they all like each other, and then like there's a new person coming in and blah blah blah. But that experience I thought was a really interesting and insightful one, and I think Tomio has done such a tremendous job. He really had a hard job, and I know that he was faced with a lot of skepticism, but he handled it really well.
That's super nice. And they had a very great event. Was it 2 days ago or
Oh,
last week?
were you at Moonshot?
Money Shot.
You flew in? Oh.
Unfortunately, I wasn't there. I wanted to be there
Sadly,
because
I
I
wasn't
saw
there
it
either.
last year's on.
No, because
But
he
it
said
looked
it with
really
such
great. Were you
confidence. I
there?
was like, were you there?
Oh no, we
I was
saw
watching the whole thing
clips.
from
We saw
Twitter.
clips and we
Oh,
saw
Yeah.
pictures there. It
okay.
looked very nice, and I'm kind of still beating myself up about it for not going because
So why
I
didn't
woke
you
up that day. I
go?
was like, "Oh, today's moonshot. Ah, I
But
missed
it
it.
was two
Ah."
days. So what's your excuse for the second day?
The next day, I was like, "Ah, today is also
Ooh.
moonshot. Ah, I missed it again." But next year we'll be there. We'll be there inside the ecosystem. Watch out, moonshot, we're coming. Moonshot, we're coming.
Okay,
Okay,
Okay.
I'm coming.
I'll look for you there. I'll look for you.
All
I'll be
right.
like, Chuka,
No worries.
Yeah.
where
We'll
you?
look for you.
I'll
Not
go
if
on
you
stage.
find you first.
I'll go on stage.
Nice. So, Christine, it's been really interesting to hear your story. So we want to talk about the present, like what you're
Okay.
doing now.
Okay.
One of the most interesting things about investing, because you mentioned a little bit about that, is the African diaspora. So the African continent right now has its troubles, has its issues, but one of the good sides is the African diaspora. So there was some statistics that I read about $150 billion being remitted back to the continent in the last 3 years. And this, I couldn't really fathom like how huge that number is. Because when you think about it, like a unicorn is 1 billion, right? Some of the biggest companies in Silicon Valley, like they do maybe tens of billions or maybe 100 billion, like in very rare cases. But then we are sending $150 billion back to the continent. Of course, most of that money is going to families and other things,
Yeah, and
but
for
also some
houses
part
that
of
will
it is
never be
probably for
completed.
exactly right. So
The money
tell us a
hasn't
little
reached
bit
me yet.
about
I'm
this.
upset.
It's
So
because
tell
you
us a
don't
little
have the
bit
right
about it.
relatives.
Yeah.
Sorry, what
Well,
did you
I
say?
mean,
I'll
I say you don't have the right relatives. So, and Emmanuel, I can't tell you anything about that money because, like, Chika, the money has not reached me yet.
Sadly.
No, but on a more serious note, yeah, the diaspora are a really important force for good and also for disruption, to be honest, on the continent. And I think that there's a complicated there's a complicated conversation on it going on in, diaspora communities around the world in terms of, is the way that this money is being mobilized the most effective way to make impact on the continent. There's certainly a small chunk of that remittance that goes toward projects, right? Goes towards getting people through school, goes toward helping people to set up their companies. But by and large, most of that money kind of disappears into a weird black hole. But we know that that money is critical for, family upkeep and, different things like that. But I think the real opportunity is figuring out how to harness that capital in more strategic ways, how to harness that capital in ways that allow us to drive venture forward. Certainly in the venture ecosystem, I mean, across the different funds and, angel communities I'm part of, I see the way that the diaspora capital is helping early stage founders who otherwise would not be able to mobilize capital, right? So, 5 years ago when I moved to Nigeria 10 years ago, but like 5 years ago when, things were really popping off in the ecosystem, founders would struggle to mobilize that 20, 30K. Today, with friends and family really being like, going from angel community to angel community or diaspora group to diaspora group, they raise hundreds of thousands of dollars sometimes, right? But at least 50,000.
Yeah, true.
And that is diaspora power right there, right? I'm on 4 groups where routinely people are posting decks saying, hey, are you interested? Hit me up, send me something. And, folks will say, yeah, I think I might want to throw something. They ask thoughtful questions. Sometimes they're like even saying, oh, I don't understand why this is a problem, which is such a great question to ask a founder because it causes them to really sit in the problem space and articulate that more sharply. So, yeah, all this to say that even though the money has not reached me yet, I do see how important this work that the diaspora are doing with their money is.
I just want to say, someone telling you that they don't understand how your solution is solving a problem is one of the scariest things to hear as a founder.
It's so important. Like, I agree it's scary, but this is actually the thing that we tell our founders all the time at Innovate, right? Is like, sit with the problem, right? Because I agree that it's scary, but it's so helpful because anything that forces you to more deeply understand and better articulate the problem that you're solving for is something that gets you to a better product. In fact, we encourage our founders to not talk to us about their solution and to instead talk to us about the problem. We want them to fall deeply in love with the problem that they're trying to solve, help us understand the dimensions. Because when you fully scope out, right, when you know the crevices, the turns of a problem that you're trying to solve, then you can make sure that your product actually like solves that problem, right? That the solution is edging into something really, really clear and core. What a lot of folks don't realize is that this is what investors are trying to solve for when they ask for founders who have domain expertise, when they ask for founders who are second-time founders. It's because you develop those instincts, right? If you've built a company before or if you've worked in a domain for a while, you've seen the issue from so many different angles that when you come at a solution for it, it's deep, right? I was talking to a founder who's trying to build a solution around like card issuing. I didn't understand 80% of what they said. It was so technical because they were talking about every single part of the process, right? But I realized that, okay, part of the work I needed to do for this founder was kind of help them speak English to me, right? And when they did speak English, I was like, wow, you deeply understand this problem, right? And I see the issue that you're trying to solve for. Now, that kind of founder, right, if they can find the right co-founder, right, because like she needs a co-founder because she doesn't speak English. But when she finds a co-founder who can speak English, and by English I mean like, commercial sales,
Yeah, we know.
Thanks for clarifying.
yeah, right. So if she finds the right co-founder, her domain expertise, right, plus their ability to, sell, milk to cows, will really, really blow that company up, right? Because she knows exactly what she's doing, right? She knows the problem really, really intricately. And so, yes, scary question, but extremely helpful question, you know.
Yeah, I feel like you also save so much time, right?
You do. You do.
Yeah, because instead of going ahead to build, at least someone told you it's not going to work, so you can at least think more or find something else to do.
Yeah, and I don't even think so. For me, telling founders their solution isn't going to work is terrible. Like it's bad advice. But humbly saying to a founder, I don't understand how this is a solution, is I think helpful, right? Because then you're opening the door for that founder to tell you how or why it's a solution, or for them to even reflect on it, right? Because sometimes also some people just want to build something, right? So like an ex of mine, he just likes to build things. He doesn't care whose problem is solved. He just wanted to build it. He had this in his mind, but he also doesn't disturb any investors for money, right? He takes his money, he builds the thing he wants to build, and he has fun with it. He'll put up a little.
Has he made any from it? Has he made any money from it?
Yeah, he makes money from, like, he tinkers, right? He'll build some solar consumption tracking systems. He'll build some games for people to play. He'll build some gifting things. Like, he's just having fun, right? And that's okay, right? Sometimes you have a solution, you have something that you want to put in the world, and that's okay. But when you want venture, when you want venture, when you want investors, when you want venture capital, when you want outside investors' money, then there has to be some sort of problem that you've locked in on really clearly, right? And that you're then going to be able to defend, right? Defensively build a solution for. So that's the difference, right? Like, all paths are valid, right? What's the thing that they say? Everything is permissible, but not all things are beneficial, right?
Yeah.
That's the first time I'm hearing
makes
about
sense. So
that.
beyond,
It's not recognizing. You see?
really, that's the first time.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm sorry I don't read enough books, guys. I'm so sorry. I'm sorry.
It's in
No.
the Bible,
Do you know what it is? You are not a child of God.
Oh, the Bible is also a book. I'm sorry, Lord.
Okay. Yeah. So beyond finances, do you think there are other things that the diaspora can give back to the continent? Of course, you have things like moving back and actually building something. There is also some form of partnership. There is also transferable skills. I don't know, maybe work in Lagos for a bit, transfer the skills that you have, and then move back, whatever. So, do you have any thoughts on how this
so
would
many
look practically?
I think for me, those
I'm
things.
sorry. I
are
keep
even
hearing
more
move
important.
back, and I'm I keep hearing
You're
move
looking
back.
at Emmanuel. You're like, Emmanuel, where are you? Should I pick you up at the airport tomorrow?
Or the time will come.
I also want you to answer that question. Yeah, I want you to answer Emmanuel's question, but I also want you to answer the moving back. Like, what do you think about that?
What do I think
In
about
today's
that?
world?
Yeah, I'll answer that. So, Emmanuel's question, I think there's many, many more important things than capital. One is market access, right? Your relationships as a person in the diaspora. There are so many SMEs, small businesses stateside that need access to affordable talent, great products, and your fellow entrepreneurs on the continent, they need the dollars, right? They need the dollars to hedge some of the local risk while they're trying to prove the market, while they're trying to find PMF and so on and so forth. So I think market access is a really great opportunity that diasporans can unlock for folks on the continent. I think mentorship, right? One of the things that even me as a baby coming out of uni, the gap between me and many of the people who also were just coming out of uni but had gone to uni on the continent was so wide because of the access, the resources, the things that I knew that I was able to do. So even just providing that peer-to-peer mentorship, or that, so not just, vertical mentorship, which is also useful, but horizontal mentorship is really important. I think if you can dedicate a month, 2 weeks, a week to work in a company, give them support, look at their systems and processes and say, hey, you should try this or you should do that. Like, that's really valuable. Coaching, is really valuable. If you can, provide coaching to leaders, you can provide coaching. I'm sure my friends are tired of me because I'm routinely like being like, please, can you mentor my stuff? Please, can you help me with this entrepreneur? Like, I'm that person. I'm just like constantly, and I'm like, they stop answering my messages sometimes, but I'm persistent because I just think that there's so much value in that knowledge exchange that also really needs to be unlocked. And then networks, right? Introductions, because there's just something about, you, especially for folks in the diaspora that have also lived on the continent, there are things we see that we're like, wait, if this person could be connected to that person, it would really benefit both of them. But then we kind of passively just ignore it because, we're living our lives and, the tube is expensive or, Uber costs too much to the airport, whatever, right? So I think that those things are really important. Then to Chuka, your question about moving back. So before NSARS, I was actually a huge anti-JAPA person. I thought it was terrible to do. I thought it represented giving up. I thought it was, but for a specific class of people, right? I have always felt that leaving and moving is important for people in lower economic classes to do. But for the people that I was at clubs and nightclubs with that were buying bottles, I really found it, I was deeply irritated by them. Because I felt like you live the best life in Lagos and then you go and you live the best life or well, try and live a different life in London. Like, I just thought it was very selfish. But I think NSARS and like that experience changed how I saw that move. And I realized that sometimes living in certain places is like, it's existential, right? So it's not just selfish. Sometimes it's about survival. It's about mental health. It's about wellness. It's about thriving. It's about safety. So I'm no longer on that anti-JAPA crusade. I do think people should move back, but I think that people should be strategic about moving back, right? I think if you just move back because, the West is hard and miserable and you just want to go back to being able to eat suya and drive recklessly and get away with it for one profession, that's not super healthy, right? But I think that if you have some sort of 5-year plan, 10-year plan, 15-year plan, 20-year plan, and you build progressively toward it, right? Whether it's like systematically investing in something, building something, I think that's a really great way to think about moving back, right? But have a plan. I will say I'm not a fan of people who move and think, yeah, I'm gone, I'm done, right? I think it's unpatriotic. And I think we need better citizenship than that. But I do feel, and so I would say that I recommend moving back. But I also don't recommend moving back without a plan. I don't recommend moving back for its own sake. I think that one has to think about leaving, right, as not escape, but as maybe reprieve or as a way to build better and come back and be able to do better. So that's my view, right? And hopefully it's not too controversial. Everything is controversial these days, but sorry.
No, I think it's a well balanced view to have, to be honest.
Yeah. Well, let's see what Twitter thinks.
I also think in multiple ways.
Water is wet. What do you mean water is wet?
We'll let the audience decide whether it's controversial or not.
Yeah.
Fine. So Kristen, talk to us about Innovate Africa Fund, and basically for someone hearing about that for the first time, if you were to speak English to us, how would you do that?
So at Innovate, right, what we're trying to do is help folks who have, big, bold vision get to sustainable companies, right? So we basically say that we are scaling sustainable innovation. That's what we want. We want people with big, bright, incredible ideas, and we want to help them build companies that will be able to scale. That's what we do. And maybe to just put a little bit of an ask or a plug there, we're really trying to work really hard to have an ecosystem approach. So we want to connect with not just founders, but operators, angel investors, just anyone who, you know, wants to change the way that the continent participates in the future of technology and the future of innovation. So that's us at Innovate.
It's
Okay.
nice. And it's also a founder first catalyst fund.
Very
There are
fun with
two things. There are two things to unpack. Founder first and then catalyst fund. So
Yes.
let's start with the first one.
So the founder first is just that's who we care about, right? Because we're founders, right? Christian and I. So Christian's my co-founder. Both of us um, are founders. We built multiple companies. We know what that journey is like. Christian's whole entire life these days is coaching, right? Coaching founders, coaching product teams, coaching product leaders, helping them to build better businesses. My work is, supporting founders, helping them to get out of survival mode and into growth mode. Hence, our company Spurt. And so together, I think we're just that's what we care about, right? Supporting founders really intentionally, and deeply. Um, and then the catalyst piece is because we're not just equity; we also offer debt. We're
Oh, okay.
offering
That's
catalyst
interesting.
capital, yeah. And I think it's also maybe important to say at this point that we're interested in innovation, which doesn't always have to be like digital technology, right? So also useful to say that that's a differentiator for us. Um, so yeah, that's us.
That's very interesting. Is it common or uncommon for funds to also offer debt?
It depends, right? There are venture debt funds. There
Oh,
are,
okay.
yeah, but they're not common. Yeah, but they're becoming more of a thing, and I think on the
But
continent
isn't that like anti returns ish?
it is. But if you think about, you know, just making things, balancing things out, thinking about what the continent really needs. Sometimes some founders don't need equity; they need debt, right, to kind of accelerate. And if you think about our strategy, we're going in very early, right? So we will lock in that kind of like large maximal return thing anyway, and then the debt will come later, like in the cycle, right? So it's not like
Okay.
you have an idea and then we give you a loan for your idea, right? We probably take equity then and then can give you a loan later on so that you're not being diluted. Do you get what I'm
Yeah.
saying? Yeah.
A funny story. Well, it's not funny,
Better laugh.
but I've heard I've heard of founders who disappear after they receive money. Is that
Very
true?
common. Very common. Very
Can
common.
you
I
share
said
an
it was not
experience with
funny,
us,
but
please?
If you find him, his name is Achudabo. If you find him, tell him that we
Oh,
hope he's well. We hope he's alive.
wait, I know that
wait.
guy.
Is it Bitsica?
We all know him. Yes, no. We all know him, Jerry.
Kristen,
That's crazy.
you sound pained right now.
No, no, no,
Like it
no.
feels.
Funny enough, I'm not pressed. Look, I'm sure that if I send Achu like 6 intense messages, he'll respond. I just don't have
Hmm,
energy to send 6 intense messages.
fair
So
enough. Fair enough.
I just send one or two. No, 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 no. But founders do it. They
It's
do it all the time. Some people are more diligent than others.
Mm, that's interesting. I watched an interview of Inyi, and he was saying that sometimes when someone comes to him and asks him for investment, like, "Oh, I have this idea," he would just give them 5K. Take, go and use this money.
Yeah,
No strings attached. He said most of them don't come back, which is
yeah.
very interesting. I
Hmm.
wish I had 5K to be thrown around, but okay.
this is very
So,
interesting information.
yeah.
I
So
don't know.
funding
Does he
early.
still do that?
I don't know if he still does that, but
In this economy,
the interview was this year. Yeah.
Because that sounds like Idris in his early days as well. Idris Bello.
Idris
Okay.
Bello. That name
Idris Bello.
sounds familiar.
Yes, Lofty Inc.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
I said
that's
okay, like I
somebody you
know
should
what
talk
that
to
is,
if
but
you haven't spoken to. He's a very interesting chap.
Idris
okay.
Bello, we're
Good
coming
Yeah,
for you
recommendation.
yeah.
in a nice way, though.
So I can imagine that funding early stage startups must be a very interesting dynamic because when you think about like the whole investment curve, right? The earlier, the higher the returns, but also the riskiest, right? So it means that you have to be very diligent in selecting ideas and teams that would actually work. So beyond the standard due diligence, um, what extra things do you look out for when you're investing?
I would actually say our due diligence isn't even very standard, right? So, like, let me tell you two things that really helps us. One, we spend a lot of time on the Innovate side, just engaging with the founders, spending time on their problem. Um, and it helps us wean out people who are impatient, right? Because very many people just get frustrated with the conversation, and then just stop engaging. That's helpful for us because at that super early stage, 9 times out of 10, whatever you're trying is not going to work. And so if you're not patient enough and, um, engaged enough with the problem to like keep having conversations about the problem, troubleshooting the problem, running little experiments and so on and so forth, you're probably not our ideal kind of founder. Because remember, we're very, very early stage investors, right? So it's not like you have some business going already and you're coming to us for money. We're investing with you when you have like an MVP or you're running a pilot or you have an idea. So if you don't have that patience, that's really helpful for us because we already know you're not a fit. The other thing that we look out for is your ability to scope your problem. Founders that can't scope the problem that they're solving very well are not a good fit for us, because it means that they're solution focused. And that means that even when the thing is not working, because they've decided on what the solution is, they're not going to pivot quickly enough. They're not going to, try the new things that they should try. I often like to share with people just the number of pivots and just the distance between where some of the most successful companies we know are, like where they started and where they are today in terms of like what their product was. And I think those are stories we don't share enough. So founders think that, look, if I took this product to market and it's not working, let me just leave it. And for a lot of the founders that I've been angel investing now, 12 years. Is it 12? Yeah, like 12.
That's a long time.
11 years. Yeah.
Superstar.
And
That's a flex, guys.
don't kill me. And
Super angel, you mean?
in that period, right, there are founders that don't even tell you that they're closing their business, right? They just ghost. But I've also had founders reach out and say, hey, we're wrapping things up. And something that is a good sign for me of the kind of founder that I will back again and the kind of founder that I would never back again is whether or not they've run sufficient experiments, right? Because if you haven't run enough experiments, then you just got lazy, right? You were tired because it was hard, or you ran out of investors. That's my favorite, right? The founders who quit because they run out of investors' money. It was nice for you when you were spending our money, Abby. But like you have no interest in actually putting in your own capital to actually, figure out and unlock the problem. But yeah, so that's kind of like our own methodology, because if you think about the stage at which we're investing, we're not going to you probably barely have financials that we can look at. The products might not even be all the way there yet, so we'll look at it, we'll think through it, we'll look at maybe wireframes or Figma files or whatever, but there isn't too much that we might be able to look at. So we are instead spending time trying to understand what kind of person you are. I love rude founders as well because it makes it very easy for me to say no. So they're just like little things.
Man, I'm learning so much. I have to go and tweak my pitch deck before coming to Innovate Africa. But yeah, that makes a lot of that makes a lot of sense actually. It's just like how people say if like 10,000 applicants apply for a job, like the smallest things just make it easier for you to like streamline the amount of applicants. Like, oh, no cover letter, bye. No websites
Yeah.
buy, no LinkedIn buy. So yeah.
Yeah. And to be honest, like I'm not even a fan of like the no cover letter reject applicants thing. But I am a fan of like rejecting a candidate because they didn't bother to like address it to you, right? Like you're applying for a job, like at least address it to like me, somebody in the company, right? So like any generic DSM, madam, is out for me, right? Any sort of like non-specificity around. So for me, I think it's just intentionality. I know that we tell people, and I think maybe it is good advice sometimes to like do a ton, right? So they tell you you're applying to uni, apply to 20 universities. You're applying to jobs, apply to 100 jobs. I don't know about that, right? I've never really been a fan of that approach. When I applied to,
It's possible to be specific even if you're applying to 100. I'm speaking from
well, with
experience.
AI, right? I think, yeah, with automation and AI now, you can do that, right?
Yeah.
But like when I was applying to uni, I applied to, I think, 8 or 9, and it was like, I was like, I'm going to get into all these universities. And I did because
Flex.
I was intentional with all of them. No, no. Edit that.
Flex.
No, now. I'm
All
just
right,
saying
all right,
it's
all right.
easier
Mm.
if you're doing
I,
9 versus
to be
some people I
honest,
know that did 25
yeah, to be
or
honest,
15.
I think why I don't subscribe to the apply to 100 jobs thing is, I'm not going to lie. I think I'll get tired at 20. Like if I'm applying to 100 jobs, I'm going to get tired at some point. And once I get
Yeah.
tired, it's just a matter of, yeah, let me just apply.
I like how
Like,
you're saying you're tired. If you're jobless, I'm not sure you would be tired, but
man,
okay.
when I was jobless, I was tired. Oh, I'm not going to lie. Like I applied to.
You probably had something, right?
Fair
No,
enough,
yeah,
fair
and I
enough.
think also for people who want to do volume, right? Maybe do cycles, right? So maybe do 10 at a time, right? You apply to 10
Yeah.
roles, focus on those
Intentionally.
roles for
Yeah.
like a month.
Yeah.
If you haven't heard back after 6 weeks, do another 10. I think that's probably a better way than trying to blast off dozens of applications.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would.
So, no worries. So let's talk a little bit more about Innovate Africa Fund. So I suspect you have a lot of the aspirants as LPs. LP means limited partner for our audience. Is that true, or it's a mix of people from diaspora and in the continent?
It is true, but I mean, we want the people on the continent's money, we do. But it's true.
Is it easier to convince someone from diaspora than someone on the continent?
So to be honest, we don't have to do much convincing, right? I think our mission is so specific, and that the people who are like most usually what has happened is like I'm on a panel and we're talking, and then after the panel somebody's like, I like what you're doing, please send me your material. The other day somebody interviewed me about the fund, and after the interview they're like, hey, I'd like to invest. That's typically what happens for my co-founder as well. His people were like, hey, we want to support this because we know you do incredible work. So and again, you can have that approach because it's such a small fund, right? Our fund is teeny tiny. I think maybe if we were a larger fund, we would have to like hit the pavement harder and do all of that. But because it's a baby fund, and because we have such a specific approach and mission, folks who kind of understand the need to do that kind of work, they want to support it, right? And our minimum check size is 25K USD, so it's not crazy, right?
Yeah, that makes sense. And how do you intend to make the returns? Because in Nigeria, at least, I'm not sure if any tech company has done IPO. So maybe how you'd exit would be second round, series A, B, C, whatever, right? So how do you see yourself exiting
Yeah,
from these
so
businesses that
yeah,
you?
there's definitely that larger investor, buying out the very very early stage investors, which we are, yes, but then there's also secondaries, and then there's acquisition by strategics. Um, I have to say that our goal is solving the problems, right? So we're not IPO obsessed, right? So in the sense that our goal here isn't really uh, to create unicorns. Our goal is to solve problems, and sometimes a much larger company paying our founder $200 million or $300 million is a better pathway for getting that problem to scaled solution. Does that make sense? So that's
Yeah, it
our,
does.
yeah, like yeah.
And what advice would you have for anyone, maybe me or Chuka, starting a fund? Like if they want to start a fund in Nigeria, are there
Yeah, it's kind
any
of fun. Just come and build
specific?
with us.
Okay,
Just come and join
okay.
us. Bring your capital, bring your energy. You know, we'll give
Very
you a GP
straightforward.
title. In fact, you can come
No
and
beating
take
about the
my
bush.
title. Yeah, just you can come and take my title. You know, I'll sit back and relax, cross my leg, let you do all the work. It'll be great. And then I'll
Are
just
And then
there
you
any
get all
other
the returns
markets?
at the end.
Are there any other markets you draw inspiration from? Maybe China, the US, or I mean, like for
yeah,
example,
yeah,
some
no,
people say some
certainly
countries are
emerging
more
markets.
similar to Nigeria. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think for us, because we have such a strong focus on innovation and like sustainable innovation, which means like resource effectiveness as well, we are looking at places like India, Pakistan, you know, Ethiopia, China, just in terms of the way that innovation has come out of those markets. You know, Japan is another, and how they've kind of scaled those innovations, and we're also then looking for synergies as well. Um, between our markets and theirs, because there might be ways to have strategic partnerships or strategic acquisitions and so on and so forth.
All right, Kristen, before we let you go, we want to talk a little bit about sports. You mentioned it in passing,
Okay.
saying, sometimes you do some work there, and we want to kind of know, like, what what's like life, what's life like at sport, and what does the future of sport look like currently?
I feel like if you ask my interns, they'll give you a very different answer. I sent somebody their contract, and their response was, "Hey."
Well, is that a good hey or a
Hey,
bad
in
hey?
a
Because
positive way.
hey means different things in.
It's the working hours. The working hours. That
Oh,
in the contract.
Okay.
ooh.
So they were just like, ah.
So, like, just tell us about it. Tell us about it. I mean, we've already started with honesty, so let's keep it going.
No, it's intense. It's an intense environment. We try to be supportive. You know, we try to provide support, mental health resources, mentorship, and all of that. But I have high expectations of my team, and I have a general expectation that if you're no longer learning, then you should no longer be in the role. So that means you're transitioning to a higher role or you're transitioning out of the company. So that is, I mean, just a little bit, I guess, about culture. But in terms of our future, so like I said, the goal for Spurt was helping companies to, transition into that growth mode. And so our future really is just like scaling that out. We moved away from being a kind of like consulting solutions first to a technology solutions first company. So we launched in 2023, last year, the kind of our first product, which was a kind of like team collaboration workflow management product, which we've since kind of scaled up into a product suite that is kind of like an end-to-end business management product. So allows you to do everything from like recruitment to invoicing to employee happiness, perks, performance management,
Interesting.
and so on and so forth. And so our goal in the short term is to take that to market, and in the long term is to empower a million entrepreneurs to support a billion people, right? So however we get there is part of strategy, and I'm still thinking through those pieces. But ultimately, where I want to sort of say, okay, I've done what I wanted to do, is that I've directly empowered a million entrepreneurs to create prosperity for a billion people. So we do a lot of intentional tracking around like the effect of the work that we do for the companies that we support, how many jobs they're creating, how much revenue they're making, where that revenue is going, and so on and so forth. Because for me, the mission of the work is for a billion people to have better lives.
That's amazing.
A superstar with compassion and stuff. I like that. Thank you so much, Kristen. It was so fun having you on the show. We learned a lot. I'm actually very curious about funding now and starting a company, and maybe joining you guys at some point. But this was really fun. We usually end the show with a question to our guest, our superstar guest, and what we'd like to ask is, what would you be doing if you were not, you were not living this life? Like, what do you actually want to do? What's your what's your dream? Since
So
you
I
didn't
am
become a
doing
doctor,
exactly
sorry,
what
mom.
I want to do. I know, right?
Yeah.
But funny enough, I am living the life I want to live. I don't know if you know that there's a Dave Chappelle skit where he's talking about telling his audience that they're living in his dream, right? And that resonated a lot with me because for many people in my life, that you're basically living in my dream, right? Like this conversation, this interview here is like a version of my dream, and so like I'm the main character here. I don't know if you guys knew.
She is, guys. Flex once again.
So I feel an incredible amount of gratitude and humility to be able to live my dream. And even though I didn't dream it as like sharply and clearly as like Dave Chappelle articulates, when I was living it, I was like, this is how I always wanted to feel, and this is the kind of work that I wanted to do. But I don't want to do this forever, right? So what I do want to do next is use the other part of my brain a bit more and paint, write poetry, be drunk at 10 a.m. Yeah.
I think that's one of the most honest answers we've gotten. So thank you so much for that. Thank you so much. Kristen, this was so much fun. We wish you and the entire team success, and we hope to maybe bring you back here when you guys have made billions and billions of dollars. So looking forward to that. Good luck.
For our LPs, for our founders, for the community.
Of course.
Yes.
Of course.
Yes.
Of course.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode. We release new episodes every month. If you haven't, please subscribe to the show on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. And if you enjoy the show as much as we do, don't forget to leave us a 5-star review so we can reach more people. Shout out to the amazing team behind the show. This includes John, Faith, Angela, and Okechukwu. Connect with us on social media at Inside the Techos on Instagram and Twitter, and Inside the Techosystem on LinkedIn. Be one of the first people to get the latest news, updates, and announcements from us by subscribing to our newsletter. We promise we only share the coolest stuff. All right, see you in the next one.